Lainey Wilson looked Kelly Clarkson dead in the eyes and said no, one word. That's all it took to silence the entire room. Kelly just wanted to keep the peace. Invite Gwen Stefani. Avoid the awkwardness. But Lainey wasn't interested in comfortable. She was protecting something sacred.
I got a heart like a truck. It's been drugged.
His wife's name hanging in the air, Kelly's voice still echoing off the wall.
Money, he takes care of me.
An impossible moment. And a decision that would divide fans for months.
In a walking heartache.
What Lainey said next changed everything.
I got a heart like a truck. It's been drugged through.
See, when Lainey first started planning this whole thing, she made one thing crystal clear to everyone around her. This wasn't going to be some Hollywood circus. No red carpets stretching down hallways. No fancy entrances with photographers snapping away from every angle. No publicists lurking in corners making sure everyone said exactly the right things. She wanted something that actually felt like home, like where she came from. Wood floors that creaked a little when you walked across them. Worn boots sitting by the door. The smell of morning coffee drifting through wide-open fields. People close to her say she talked about it like she was describing a memory instead of planning an event. She wanted every single person in that room to feel like actual family, and not industry family where everyone's networking and swapping business cards between conversations. Real family. The kind of people who knew her before the awards started piling up on shelves, before the sold-out tours with buses and crews, before anyone cared what designer she was wearing or who she might be dating. That's a real specific kind of guest list, if you actually think about it. And it don't exactly leave a ton of room for compromise or exceptions. Now here's where Blake Shelton comes into the whole picture. When Lainey asked him to officiate the ceremony, it wasn't some calculated PR move or just because he's famous and people would talk. It was because she genuinely trusted him. Like, actually trusted him deep down. She knew he understood what it really meant to stand at the front of a room like that. The weight of it sitting on your shoulders, the responsibility you carry in that moment. And Blake, he said yes without even thinking twice about it.
That I've been lately ain't who.
I really need you to understand the difference here because it matters. She didn't want to perform for an audience. She wanted to sing from somewhere real. There's a huge gap between those two things, and Lainey caught it right away. Kelly wasn't looking for another spotlight moment to add to her resume. She was offering something straight from her heart. A gift wrapped in notes, a few quiet minutes where her voice could just hold the room completely still and let everyone breathe together. Everything about this wedding was pointing in one clear direction. Authentic, grounded, country to its absolute core. And then somebody went ahead and brought up a name that shifted the entire energy floating around in that room. Gwen Stefani. Now hold on a second before you start jumping to all kinds of conclusions here. Nobody was actively trying to stir up drama or cause unnecessary problems. Kelly was just doing what Kelly has always done her whole life. She was trying to smooth things over and make absolutely sure nobody ended up feeling weird or left out. Blake was obviously going to be there officiating. Gwen is Blake's wife. So on paper it kind of made logical sense to just extend the invite, right? Avoid any potential awkwardness lurking down the road. Keep everybody comfortable and happy. But here's what most people totally miss about this whole situation when they hear about it. Lainey didn't see it as keeping things comfortable for everyone. She saw it as breaking something sacred. Something she'd been carefully protecting from the very beginning of all this planning.
I could break away.
This is exactly where the story gets really interesting, if you ask me. Because Lainey didn't blow up at anyone. She didn't cause some dramatic scene or go storming out of the room in a huff. She didn't even raise her voice a single octave. She just simply said no, quietly but clearly. And without a single apology attached to the end of it. People who were actually there in the room say it wasn't cold or mean-spirited at all. It was just firm. She explained real calmly that this particular day wasn't about optics or making sure every single industry relationship stayed nice and perfectly neat. It was about surrounding herself with people who genuinely understood her story from living it themselves. Not people who just visited that world whenever it was convenient for their image. People who actually breathed it in every single day of their lives. She wasn't throwing any shade at anyone's talent or accomplishments. She wasn't questioning anybody's impressive career or discography. She was simply drawing a clear line in the sand for herself. And let me tell you something important here. Lines like that take some serious guts to actually draw when everyone's watching. But wait just a second. Why would Lainey feel this strongly about the whole thing in the first place? What is it about Gwen specifically that made her pump the brakes so hard? The answer honestly isn't personal at all when you dig into it. It's cultural through and through. And once you finally wrap your head around that part of the story, the whole picture really starts to shift into focus. Country music has always had this invisible wall running straight through the middle of it. On one side, you got the artists who grew up breathing this stuff in since childhood. Who sang in tiny church basements with bad acoustics and rundown dive bars way before anybody even knew their names existed? Who wore boots because they owned exactly one pair that actually fit, not because some expensive stylist told them it matched the aesthetic of the moment? And then on the other side of that wall, you got the crossovers. The ones who wandered in from somewhere else entirely. Now look, that's not automatically a bad thing, and I want to be clear about that, okay? Some crossovers genuinely bring fresh sounds and attract whole new audiences to the genre who wouldn't have found it otherwise. But there's always been this underlying tension bubbling beneath the surface. This unspoken question constantly floating around about who really belongs here and who's basically just visiting for a while. And for Lainey Wilson, her wedding day wasn't going to be the moment she started blurring those important lines.
Band-Aids, pulling back out the driveway. You go, I'll stay.
Social media platforms started absolutely buzzing with takes and opinions flying everywhere. But here's the genuinely interesting part of all the noise. It wasn't anger directed toward Gwen at all. It was pure respect aimed straight at Lainey. People kept typing the same exact thing over and over again in every comment section. She didn't cave under pressure. She actually held her ground when it mattered most. In a world where literally everybody's constantly tiptoeing around trying desperately not to offend a single soul anywhere, where every decision gets carefully run through a publicist and like 3 different focus groups before anyone actually commits to anything real, Lainey made a choice based purely on feeling, on her raw gut instinct talking to her, on what that day truly meant to her heart and absolutely nobody else. And honestly, that kind of authenticity is pretty dang rare these days if we're being real about it. Kelly apparently didn't push back at all after Lainey said that no, she completely got it. She understood exactly where Lainey was coming from with her decision. That's the part that always somehow gets conveniently left out of all the dramatic clickbait headlines chasing engagement. There was no big explosive fight happening behind closed doors. No icy stares shooting across the room between former friends. Just 2 grown women who happened to see this particular situation a little bit differently and respected each other enough to just leave it right there without making it weird. But the internet, though? Oh, come on now, you already know exactly how this part goes. The internet desperately wanted way more drama than that. It wanted a clear villain to point fingers at. It wanted defined teams and opposing sides to choose between. It wanted messy, chaotic drama that honestly just didn't actually exist anywhere. And when people couldn't find the conflict they were hunting for, something kind of interesting started happening instead. People slowly stopped obsessing over the gossip and started asking themselves the real question hiding underneath all of it. What would I have honestly done if I was standing in her shoes right then? Because here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody really wants to say out loud to each other. Most of us bend when tested. When the pressure starts building up inside our chest and the whole room goes dead quiet right after we speak our mind, we soften our position to make it easier. We say yes even when every single fiber of our gut is practically screaming no at us. We let people waltz into spaces where they honestly don't belong just because it's way easier than having that awkward, painful conversation about why they actually can't come in this time. Lainey didn't do any of that, though. She stood firm, and that right there is exactly why this story absolutely refuses to just disband. Did all that tension just hang around awkwardly in the air forever? Did Gwen ever come out and say anything about the situation publicly? Stick around for what comes next because I promise you it reveals so much more about how Lainey really thinks deep down inside. About what country music fans actually care about when you strip away all the surface noise. And about why this one seemingly simple decision ended up becoming a powerful symbol for something way bigger than just another celebrity guest list. The wedding happened exactly how Lainey had been picturing it inside her head all along. Small and intimate, warm in a way that felt genuine, completely filled with people who didn't need name tags pinned to their shirts to recognize each other across the room. Every single seat in that space belonged to someone who had actually earned their spot there through years of real authentic connection. Not contracts negotiated by lawyers. Not calculated business collabs designed for mutual benefit. Not industry favors being cashed in at convenient moments. Just real, genuine history built between real people who actually knew each other. Blake stood right up at the front, looking calm and completely steady in himself. And I mean the specific kind of calm that only ever shows up in a person after they've been through their own brutal storms and somehow managed to make it out breathing on the other side. He'd already gone through a very public divorce that played out painfully in tabloid headlines for what felt like months on end. He'd been questioned constantly and doubted openly and absolutely ripped apart by strangers online who didn't know even half of what actually happened, but he came through all of that mess, still holding on to something real and solid inside himself. Standing there in front of Lainey and her groom on their special day, he wasn't just playing some ceremonial role for the cameras watching. He was genuinely honoring an authentic bond built between actual friends. Kelly got up there to sing her part. And according to the folks who were actually sitting in that room watching it happen live, it wasn't some polished, flawless performance designed to impress everyone. It wasn't rehearsed over and over until every single note landed absolutely pristine and perfect. It was raw and real. Her voice actually cracked in a couple of places during the song. And you know what made it beautiful? That imperfection is exactly what made the whole thing so incredibly moving to witness. Because if you know literally anything at all about Kelly's personal story and journey, you already know that voice of hers has carried way more pain and heartache than most regular people could ever handle in one single lifetime. Her first marriage completely fell apart right there in front of the whole entire world watching and commenting on every detail. She had to fight incredibly hard just to protect her kids through all of it. She rebuilt her entire self one album at a time, one brutally honest interview at a time, one impossibly hard conversation at a time over years, so when she finally stood up in that room and just let her voice fill up all the empty space around everyone listening, it actually meant something real and tangible. It wasn't some performance carefully designed to impress industry people. It felt more like a prayer being offered up.
Think good is gone. Think you left me broken down. Think that I'll come running back.
Where people scrolling online started connecting some really interesting dots together. Fans everywhere noticed something important that maybe not everyone caught right away at first glance. Blake, Kelly, and Lainey all genuinely share one big thing in common when you look at their lives. They've each been completely broken out there in full public view at some point, and every single one of them still chose to keep going anyway despite the pain. They didn't just quietly disappear into hiding when life got impossibly hard to handle. They didn't go running to hide behind fancy, expensive PR teams and carefully crafted statements written by professionals trying to control narratives. They all just kept showing up, day after difficult day, week after exhausting week. And honestly, maybe that's exactly why this particular wedding felt so genuinely sacred to absolutely everyone lucky enough to be there for it. It wasn't only just a celebration of love happening between two specific people getting married to each other. It was literally a whole room absolutely overflowing with survivors who deeply understood one another without needing explanations. But wait, hold on just a second here. Where exactly does Gwen fit into all of this complicated mess anyway? Here's the thing that honestly most people really don't want to openly talk about or acknowledge out loud. Gwen's story actually isn't all that different from everybody else's if you take the time to really look at it with clear eyes. She went through her own absolutely brutal heartbreak too at one point. Her marriage to Gavin Rossdale painfully ended after years and years of swirling rumors and genuine emotional pain that most regular people honestly can't even begin to imagine experiencing. She wrote deeply personal music about all of it because that's exactly what real artists do to process their feelings. She worked through her grief right out there in full public view just like Kelly did with her own story.
It's hard to remember how it felt before.
The real issue floating around here was never actually about Gwen as a human being or as a person with feelings. It was never really about disrespecting her directly or implying she wasn't talented enough or good enough to be there. It was completely about fit. About genuinely belonging to something very specific and defined. About that unspoken cultural code that country music still quietly holds on to tightly even when the mainstream outside world keeps constantly trying to pretend those boundaries don't exist anymore. Lainey didn't owe a single person on this entire planet any kind of formal explanation for her personal choices. But man, the way fans everywhere interpreted exactly what she did honestly said absolutely everything that needed saying. Comment sections across every single social media platform just completely lit up with passionate reactions flying everywhere. People were enthusiastically tagging their friends left and right to make sure they saw this, sharing video clips and screenshots literally everywhere they could, writing whole detailed paragraphs pouring out what this one singular moment meant to them on a deeply personal level. One particular fan wrote something online that honestly stopped me right in my tracks when I first stumbled across it and read the words. She said, "Lainey reminded me that I'm actually allowed to protect my own peace without apologizing. That saying no to somebody doesn't automatically mean I hate them as a person. It just means I finally understand clearly what I actually need for myself." And that's the exact precise moment when I suddenly realized this whole story was never really about some fancy celebrity wedding in the first place at all. It's actually about boundaries and learning to set them. About that constant, exhausting pressure we all feel every day to include absolutely everyone in everything, even when doing so costs us an important piece of ourselves in the process. About finally learning the real meaningful difference between being genuinely kind to people and just being a total pushover who physically can't bring themselves to say no to anyone ever. Because seriously, just think about it for a quick second here. How many times throughout your own life have you reluctantly let someone into your personal space, your carefully planned moment, your hard-earned celebration, just because you desperately wanted to dodge having an uncomfortable, awkward conversation with them? How many times did you end up deeply regretting that weak decision later when it was already way too late to take any of it back? Lainey made her firm choice before the regret even had half a chance to show its face anywhere. And look here, whether you totally agree with exactly what she did or you think she was being too harsh or not, you absolutely gotta admit at least one important thing about it. That level of crystal clarity is honestly something most regular people walking around just simply don't have access to. Not when it actually really counts anyway in the pressure.
Who I wanna be, but you stay here right beside me.
Here's the specific part of all this drama that might actually genuinely surprise you a little bit when you hear it. After all that incredible noise completely blowing up across the internet, after all those weeks of wild speculation and scorching hot takes flying around absolutely everywhere you looked, there was literally no public fallout whatsoever to speak of. Gwen never publicly responded to any single part of it at all. Blake didn't get awkwardly forced into picking painful sides between different people he genuinely cared about. Kelly didn't walk away from the situation holding on to any resentment or bitterness inside her heart. The whole dramatic moment just kinda quietly passed right on by, and regular life kept steadily moving forward exactly like it always somehow does eventually. But the internet, though? Oh, come on, now you definitely already know exactly how this whole thing goes by now. The internet absolutely held on to this particular story like it genuinely meant something truly important beyond surface-level gossip. Like it actually mattered way more than just another round of celebrity drama to consume and forget about. And honestly, thinking about it now, maybe it really genuinely did matter that much. Because in a modern culture that literally financially rewards people for constantly oversharing every single mundane moment of their entire existence and chronically overexposing every tiny detail of their personal lives, for engagement, Lainey actually gave all of us something incredibly rare to witness. A completely private boundary that she held absolutely firm, even while standing fully exposed in the harsh public spotlight. No manufactured drama designed to generate headlines. No exhausting apology tours strategically hitting every podcast that would enthusiastically have her on as a guest. Just one single quiet no that somehow managed to echo way louder across the internet than any screaming sensational headline ever possibly could have. Fans everywhere started naturally comparing this whole situation to other truly pivotal moments scattered throughout the long, rich history of country music. Those specific, defining times when genuine artists had to make a real, consequential choice between endlessly chasing the bright spotlight and actually protecting their own authentic soul in the process. And here's the thing that's genuinely wild about all of it. Almost every single time throughout history when faced with that choice, the ones who deliberately chose authenticity over fame ended up being remembered so much longer than the ones who didn't make that harder choice. That particular observation honestly gives me legitimate chills running down my spine when I really sit quietly with it for a minute, because it strongly suggests something pretty deeply uncomfortable that nobody really wants to directly face or think about too hard. Maybe the real, actual cost of saying yes way too often to everyone isn't just temporarily losing your peace of mind for a little while until things settle down. Maybe it's actually your entire legacy and how you'll be remembered that's secretly on the line. Online did actually raise a pretty fair and valid question about this whole entire situation worth considering. Is this whole thing maybe possibly being blown just a tiny bit out of proportion by everyone talking about it? Yeah, sure, possibly that's happening. But I genuinely think the real reason this particular story stuck around stubbornly for as long as it actually did is simply because regular people saw themselves personally reflected in it somewhere deep down. How many of us right at this very moment are busy planning our own weddings or birthday parties or holiday dinners or family gatherings and already absolutely dreading that specific uncomfortable part where we gotta finally decide who actually makes the list and who unfortunately doesn't this time around? How many of us personally know at least one difficult someone who would completely lose their entire mind in frustration if we didn't automatically include the expected obligatory name on every single invitation we send out? Lainey showed regular, everyday people everywhere that it's actually genuinely okay to choose your inner circle real carefully and deliberately. That thoughtful curation of your space isn't remotely the same thing as cruelty, no matter what anyone out there tries to guilt you into believing otherwise. That you seriously don't owe anybody, anywhere, any kind of formal explanation or justification for simply protecting your own hard-earned peace. And guess what happened next? The entire country music world definitely took clear notice of what she did. Other established artists started quietly sharing their obvious support through subtle little gestures that added up. Strategic retweets at just the right moments, meaningful likes on specific posts, small knowing nods scattered here and there across social media that all added up together to send one single, much bigger unified message out into the world. People out there are honestly just really tired at this point. Tired of constantly pretending everything's perfectly fine when it's not. Tired of feeling endlessly obligated to formally invite obligation itself as a guest to every single table they carefully set for celebrations. So look, if you're still sitting there right now actively trying to figure out whether Lainey was completely right or totally wrong in how she handled all of this, maybe that's actually not even the correct question you should really be seriously asking yourself in the first place. Maybe the real, deeper question hiding quietly underneath absolutely all of it is actually this instead. What exactly would you personally choose to fiercely protect if you actually finally had the genuine courage inside you to really do it when the moment came?
Because of you, I never strayed too far from the sidewalk.
Your own wedding day that you've been dreaming about forever. Your special birthday celebration surrounded by people who matter. Your carefully curated inner circle of actually trusted people. Your precious sanity and fragile mental health that you work so hard to maintain? What specific things would you personally choose to keep genuinely sacred in your life if you finally just stopped completely wasting all your limited energy constantly worrying about what random other people out there might possibly say behind your back when you're not around to hear it? Lainey already clearly answered that important question for herself through her actions. And the whole entire reason this particular story is still actively living and breathing on social media platforms right now today, still constantly sparking heated, passionate debates in literally every single comment section everywhere, still regularly getting brought up by strangers months and months after it originally happened, is honestly because most of us regular folks out here scrolling through our phones haven't actually answered that same question for ourselves yet. Not yet anyway, but hey, maybe that's about to change soon for some of you watching this. Drop a comment down below right now and tell me something real. What specific moment in your own personal life finally taught you the genuine power and freedom that comes from learning to say no without guilt? I honestly, genuinely want to hear your actual story and what you learned from going through it. And hey, if this particular video hit just a little bit different for you today than you expected it would, go ahead and smash that subscribe button while you're already here thinking about it. We put out exactly these kinds of untold, deeper stories every single week without fail. The ones that actually make you stop scrolling and really think for a minute. The ones that somehow stick with you way longer than they probably should after the video ends. Alright, that's all I got for you today. I'll catch you in the next one real soon. Take care of yourself out there.